Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BS Session 23, November 11th, 2022. This is Remembrance Day. Eventually, I'll click the button.
Yeah, you'll get there.
All right.
Well, how are you guys tonight?
Oh,
Mint.
I'm doing.
Mint.
Rob is mint. I'm all right.
Rob's a little bit tuned up already.
Uh-oh.
Rob has been doing what a guy would do on Remembrance Day as a vet. Yeah, absolutely. It's been
Is your car moving right now, or are you sitting in a stationary car?
Oh, dude, I'm on Deerfoot, probably about $1.20 right now.
Oh, nice. Perfect. Good.
Oh yeah. If you can't have an element of danger, you don't want to be part of this.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So-
No. I'm on a side street. I stepped out from the festivities to join you guys. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Appreciate it.
Rooster,
Yeah.
do you wanna introduce Rob to the folks? And
Well, sure. Our guest tonight is Rob. We'll leave it at that. He's a vet. I'm not sure how long you spent in the service or anything like that, but he's come along to. He's a friend of ours through the show, through EM Precision Rifles. I've known him for 3 years, 4 years now. Something
Yeah,
like
about
that.
3 years. Yeah. Yep. It's been a time.
You betcha. Yeah, come to regulate us on this fine day.
There's no regulation. She's wide open, boys. Yeah.
Sounds good.
well,
Did you
before
want
we get
to add
in,
to that at all, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, you say you don't know how long. I was probably a short timer. I spent 4 years. I was armored. I was 8th Canadian Hussars. Kind of a unique career. It was. I spent all those 4 years in Germany with a NATO posting. It was a Cold War posting, right? Waiting for Crazy Ivan to come across the board. It only took 23 years. 25 years for him to do what we were waiting for him to do. But that was the mission at the time, right? So that was my career.
Your entire career.
Yeah, it was. I spent the vast majority. I spent a short, not even maybe 6 months in Canada with my career. The rest of it was in Germany.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
And now you're back home as a millwright and the
Millwright.
purveyor of 712 precision.
712 Precision. Yeah. My personal shooting brand, working up that perfecting that craft, right? Going on that path of shooting.
I've been watching your posts on Instagram and that, and thinking, oh, man, I gotta pick up my game.
Pick up your game. Oh, come on, please.
You're catching
Please.
up. I can have that.
I was it was a humbling year. What the hell? Oh, there we go. It was my first year competing this year on the PRS circuit, and it was a very small circuit. It was within the range I belonged to, and it was humbling, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
It's one thing to lay behind a rifle prone on a mat and see successes, whether it be the small, tiny groups or hits at long distance. Um, but you put that into a dynamic environment that's PRS shooting, and you are humbled, and I love it. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it takes a bit of a chunk out of a guy's ego every once in a while, doesn't
Perfect.
it?
Yeah.
All right, Chris, you want to get into what we're trying to plan to do on this show tonight? Are you there?
Yeah, well, I just put a quick chat in for everybody who's. Am I not online?
Yeah, no, you're good now.
Yeah.
Am I back yet?
Yeah,
Oof.
you're back.
I was having great internet all day until we went live. I
Of
was
course.
just saying that I just kind of put in the chat for everybody. Yeah, for everybody who's joining us on chat, that we're gonna chat with Rob for a little bit. We're gonna chat about Remembrance Day, maybe talk a couple of about a couple of things in regards to Remembrance Day, or about some previous things that Canada has been involved in previous wars, that sort of thing. And then we're going to open it up for call-ins. You guys will have two ways for everybody to call in. We'll have a phone number, and we'll also have the link for the live stream, so you can join us on the live stream for a little bit. You can tell us any stories that you have. Tell us about maybe if you had family who served, or if you served, or if you just anything really that you'd like to share about Remembrance Day. And we'll do that for a little bit. We do maybe have to apologize to our regular listeners, because we don't think about this in Saskatchewan. Us and Arizona and Mexico City do not observe daylight savings time.
Right.
The rest of the world does. So we've already had a couple of comments saying, like, why are you guys on early tonight? Well, we're not. Not for us anyway.
I just said to you, I was like, are you guys on 7 Calgary time? Yeah. In 4 minutes, I'm like, okay, well, it's 6 o'clock here, so I'm running out to the car.
Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I
Hey,
never
you know what?
thought about that.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
And that happened like days ago, didn't it? Like a week ago.
Sunday.
Was it just on
last
Sunday?
week. Sunday last week, yeah.
Well,
So a
I
week ago,
thought it
yeah,
happened.
almost.
I thought it happened, but I punched it into my Googler machine thing there, and today, and I said current time in Alberta, and it came up with the same
That
time as Saskatchewan. So
is hilarious.
the Googler's off.
Stupid Google.
Well, it is what it is. Hopefully for some of our viewers, joining us early is a good thing. I don't know. Let's hope. So other than that, we should probably talk about all the people that allow us to do this on a regular basis. What do you think about that, Kurt?
Yeah, I think that's a.
You want to start us off?
Idea. You betcha. So, Bolt Action Coffee, veteran-owned company, for world-class specialty coffee from world-class Canadian Forces veterans. Go to boltactioncoffee.com. Order up some coffee for any occasion, and while you're there, check out their great line of apparel, mugs, stickers, and patches. Help support a great veterans organization as well as this show.
We are also brought to you by Callsign 66, another great veterans organization. Just starting out in the precision shooting world? Want to refine your skills you already possess? Are you looking for guidance to take your job to the next level? Train with Callsign 66 for standard setting instruction and become part of the reason why Canadian precision riflemen are renowned worldwide for being some of the most proficient in their craft. Collaboration and contributions are vital to team success. Welcome to the Brotherhood. For upcoming training dates and to find out more about the Callsign 66 team, go to callsign66.ca.
We are also brought to you by EM Precision Rifles in Leduc, Alberta, building Canada's finest precision rifles. Commission a build today at emprifles.ca.
And Odell Engineering. Pick up a Canuck shotgun or Brigera rifle from your local distributor and tell them Phil sent you. Look them up at odellengineeringltd.com.
And Apex Optics. When you buy Apex, precision comes standard. Find them at apexoptics.co. Grab yourself a Rival 4-32 rifle scope and get on the mailing list for more exciting products coming soon.
I think some of those exciting products are coming very soon, actually.
I think so, yeah.
Ribstone Gunsmithing, craftsmanship done right. Contact Oscar at ribstonegunsmithing.ca and breathe life back into any firearm. And if you'd like to get to know Oscar, he's our guest for the previous 2 episodes in a row.
more so the second round of that.
Yeah, he was a fly on the wall for the one before
Yeah.
that.
And finally, March Scopes Canada. The Dion Optical Design line of rifle scopes has a scope for all your hunting and shooting needs. Find Doug and Niza at marchscopes.ca.
There we go. All right, let's get into it. Rob, I've got a question right off the bat.
Yes.
Sorry, you're making a comment? Go ahead.
No, I just want to say, man, that is an outstanding lineup of supporters you guys have.
Oh, no kidding.
Top-notch guys.
Lucky.
Top-notch guys. I'm humbled and fortunate to know most of those guys. So,
Yes.
fantastic. Yeah.
We are definitely lucky with the people who are helping support the show. There's no question about that. Yeah.
All right. Question, Chris. Go.
Yes. Okay. I've always wondered this because I've never served, but I have had multiple friends who have served, and they've always been, stationed in places. Germany, I think like Okinawa, I think is a big one. Or
Wow.
Is that the U.S.? Is that the U.S.?
I mean, U.S. I mean, I've never heard of Canada being Okinawa, but
Okay.
there's lots of ways for a Canadian to be probably posted to Okinawa with the U.S. So,
Well, I had a buddy I went to high school with was a dual citizen, and he became a Marine after high school. He moved to the U.S., became a Marine. I know he was in Okinawa.
Sure.
And similar to what you're saying, his entire time in was peacetime. He actually left right before 9/11.
right.
And so his whole thing was like, oh, I spent most of the time in Okinawa. How exactly does that work? Are you like, is it just like drills and downtime and drills and more drills? Or like when you're stationed in a foreign country like that?
So stationed to a foreign country. So again, depends on why you're stationed to a foreign country.
Okay.
So if you're an officer, and typically a lot of foreign country postings rely on the officer side of things, right? There's a lot of cross training there. So you could be a part of a command or just kind of part of the mundane paperwork pushing. But in the case of what I was doing, so when I was posted to Germany, which is the early 90s in the Cold War, that was a legit Cold War posting. So there was there was a lot of training component to that, but it was all around being a deterrent for Crazy Ivan in case decided to come across that, that East-West Germany border and decide to take over the world, right? So for us at that point, it was a lot of training, a lot of downtime, a lot of garrison work, but the training was, I didn't find out until after I got out that, we in Germany got a lot of live rounds. We got a lot of ammunition. We got a lot of supplies that Canada never got at the time, right? Like we were given a lot more priority in our training and the resources to be ready for what was perceived as a very imminent threat at the time, right? So you look at the guys.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that because you guys would have been on what would have been considered the front line if it had gone
very much the front
hot?
line?
Okay.
100%. Yep. Yeah,
Sorry,
that was,
I didn't mean
because no, 100% answer the questions. It was a NATO posting. That was there was not just us. There was the Americans in Germany. There was the Brits, the Dutch. We were all there, and it was all part of that front line defense against this perceived Cold War threat. Right. Today it's Latvia. Right. Latvia has been that kind of a posting for how long we've been in Latvia now? Probably 5 years, every bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been again against that kind of Cold War, communist threat, right? So we've been on that border between Latvia, communist Russia, and it's just been a whole show of, force against that. But those guys, while they're out there training and doing that, there's a lot of bravado behind that, right? Sorry, in the car. So when you were, again, depending on whether you're junior ranks or officer, when you're posted out of country, typically, unless it is an actual deployment like Afghanistan, it is, your time is divided up between training and garrison time, but it is very much, again, my time in Germany was always geared around, look, this is a deployment. It's not a deployment in the sense of what you might think of like Afghanistan or World War II type or Korea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had what they called snowballs all the time, where you could just be in bed and the alarm would go off, and it was a practice run against, the attack, right? And sometimes you didn't know, right?
Just the constant imminent threat idea.
Constant imminent threat. So that is, we don't have a lot of those type of. Latvia I would think would be the only one today that would be equivalent to that Germany type posting, right? But we definitely have lots of Canadian forces posted around the world at any one time. Yeah. Today, right?
So would a lot of that stuff, like, I'm just trying to get a sense for it as a civilian. Was there a lot of like show of force stuff? Like, is there a lot of like peacocking in like on your side and then on their side sort of thing, or was it relatively quiet and the politicians were just doing their thing, or like?
So again, so when I was there, I don't know if you guys, I mean, Kurt, you're probably, you've been around since the 90s.
Thanks for acknowledging that.
I mean, the Cold War was a known thing, right? I mean, you were coming hot off of the Cuban Missile Crisis and stuff like that, right? So a show of force, just being there and training, that in itself was a show of force. Latvia today would be a bigger, and has been a bigger show of force, right? Like, all the training that's happened in Latvia has been right on the border with Russia. It's always been about, look what we have, look what we can do, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know a whole lot about what's going on in Latvia right now. Like, what exactly is going on there?
Well, again, I'm not an expert at this by any means, and I follow probably as little as I need to, but Latvia has always been kind of a pressure point with Russia. As far as their ideology of expansion, and it's always been perceived as a hot point, I feel, and I could be wrong on that. It was just a spot. Latvia is friendly to NATO, is friendly to the Western democracies, so we just have posted forces there and just train there, and it just the actions of training, whether we don't have to do anything special.
Yeah,
it's just you have your equipment, you have tactics. It's a presence. It's to show that, hey, we're here, right?
Yeah, it's all part of that mutually assured destruction sort of thing.
Yeah. So now we have Russia in Ukraine, right? So did it do anything to deter that? I don't know. I mean, they went ahead and did what they wanted
to maybe help ignite this current situation. NATO's push up against that border sort of thing, according to what I've read and heard. That's been a kind of a sticking point, I guess, for Russia, right? Like, get the fuck off my doorstep.
Russia
years.
Yeah, Putin does have an issue with NATO's circling of Russia. Yeah,
for sure.
So, but
I've got a quick question here, and feel free to answer whatever questions you want to, and whatever questions you don't want to. Just give us and we'll move on. But C&T Designs and Arms was wondering where in Germany you were. If
there
you were
was
in the same place the whole time. I don't know, but
I was. So there was two main bases in Germany when I was there. There was Lahr and Baden-Baden. I was posted in Lahr. Lahr was kind of, we had the armored, which is what I was. I was with the 18 Hussars. There was the infantry there at the time was the Van Du. We had, because it was an airfield, we had a artillery side of air defense. For CER, we had the combat arms, or the combat engineers there. And then Baden-Baden, which was not far down the road, that was basically the Air Force, right? So you had your CF-18s more or less 100% out of bottom. But yeah, I was out of Lar
Okay.
is where I
Cool.
was stationed, and there was really no, going kind of between bases. That's where we were. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. And for
I
how
think.
long were you there?
I was there for 4 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. It
Yeah,
sounds like he's asking because it sounds like he was there as a
it,
kid for a little
yeah. He
while. His
said
dad was stationed. Yeah.
he was there as a kid. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, an interesting thing with Lar, because it was such a long posting. It was a 4 year posting, which is, again, it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure a lot of postings were kind of on a 4 year stint. So again, so going back to my experience, Armor Corps, we have three armored regiments in Canada.
Hmm.
And you could have been posted to any regiment, right? So whether you're a Strathcona, RCD, or 12 RBC, you could be posted amongst regiments, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
maybe they said, look, you're going there. But being in Germany, being it was a 4 year posting, you would take your family there, right? So if you were, they had elementary schools there, they had kindergarten, they had high schools there, and your whole family was there, right?
I guess that's what
So
those people mean when they say they grew up as army brats or whatever.
yes, yep.
Yeah.
So there was definitely, so like the one person they're watching, yeah, if his family was there, he was growing up in Germany for 4 years.
Yeah, he was saying that him and his
In
family were in
Heidelberg.
Heidelberg. Yeah.
Yeah. What the trade was that his father was in.
Well, CNT, if you know what trade your dad was in, put it in the chat. Let us know.
Yeah.
Um, so, when you were just mentioning that, I was thinking, um, you basically like create a town in these places, right? Like, how many people are on a base, and like I'm assuming that the families are living on the base as well, right?
No. So, gee,
No.
so
Okay.
Germany at the time was a whole brigade, and I couldn't begin to tell what a brigade is. I've been out for 20 some years. So, what's a brigade? It's a lot. There's a lot involved in your brigade, right?
Okay.
Um, so typically on the base itself, at least in Germany, there was no married quarters on the base itself. So
Oh, okay.
any living on base, like I lived on base in the single quarters. I was like, what, 19 when I got there, right? Into my 20s. But there was married quarters off the base, right? There was sections of Lara that were, for the married people. Or you could just rent. You call it living on economy, right? You would just rent a house.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
That was just specific to the like that time in Germany sort of thing.
yep, I'd imagine so.
Okay, cool. All right. C&T says that his dad was Army Signal Corps.
Signal Corps. Gotcha. Yeah. So I'm not sure if his dad was an officer or not, but um, being with signals, it's very in Heidelberg. There might have been a small. Yeah. Thanks, brother. No worries. There might have been a small base there for Canadians, like part of some type of radar watch, perhaps, or something. I don't know. Or if his father was an officer, he might have been attached with a sergeant. Yeah. So again, I don't know. I don't know the situation. He could have been
Yeah.
attached with another country or whatnot, right? Or there was a
Yeah.
small base there just for signals, right? 100%.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I before we start taking calls from people and bringing other people on, I wanted to ask you maybe just a couple of questions specifically about Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
Um, you know, as I don't know, call us civvies, call us whatever you want, people who've never served. Remembrance Day is kind of like a time to acknowledge and honor the people who did what we didn't do, or
Right.
for our country, sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I think for a lot of us, that's kind of what it is. It's about honoring the people who did what we didn't. And what I wanted to ask you was, like,
Yeah.
as a veteran, like you said, you've been out for 20 years now. and it sounds like you've got more family members, that are enlisting or enlisted.
Yeah.
As a military family, what what is Remembrance Day to you guys, and
Mm,
what do you
sure.
normally do to mark it?
Oh man. So long answer. There's no short answer to this one. Um, and I guess maybe some background. So my grandfather was World War II. He served with the South Saskatchewan Regiment. Um, and he took part in a very significant battle on Various Ridge, which is a kind of an offshoot of D-Day, where he was taken prisoner of war on a
Right off
god
the bat,
awful
hey.
stormy night. Oh, and spent some beautiful time with the Germans there,
Hmm.
against his will, until he was liberated with the Americans, right? So that's kind of, I grew up with that, and as a young man out of high school, not quite sure what I was going to do with my life, and a father who would ask me quite often what I was going to do with my life. I just kind of threw a dart against the dartboard and said, you know what, I'm joining the army. Fuck it, right?
Yeah.
And just ended up in Germany, and it became a big part of my life, and it's defined a lot of who I am today. And ended up with a lot of brothers out of that, right?
Mhm.
And those guys, oh my God, they're your life, right? And so my son grew up around that and seen that brotherhood. And I never pushed that kid at all once towards the military, but that's where he ended up wanting to go.
Hmm.
So I said, okay, that's fine. You're not going to do it the way I did it, right? I know better now. So he's got a game plan in place for the military. But today, he's joined the reserves. He's with the King's Own in Calgary, um, going to university, taking advantage of what's to be offered through that program as far as paid education. And today was his very first day, Remembrance Day in the forces, right? So
Hmm.
it's very much now become this family thing. Totally unexpected. Like, I just did not see that ever coming, right? So
Mhm.
one of the guys that I was very close with, that I served with, he lives very close to me. He's been a big part of my family, big part of my son's growing up, and he was there today with us. And so that is how that just kind of, I don't think there's any intention for people to have that in their family, but looking back, I can see how it's like this inevitable path
Yeah.
for a family to have this history. I just never seen, like, when you, oh, and my grandma just kind of, because she died so long ago. My grandma was a bomb girl. Oh, my grandpa
Oh,
was
really?
was over in Europe, right? So there's this,
No kidding.
yeah, right. So you have this history that I grew up with, and never once did I think I'd be today where I am today, right?
Mhm.
Sharing
Hmm.
this moment with my son. So incredible, to be there. So Remembrance Day, um, geez, when you're in, it means something. You're serving, you're with your brothers. Um, Remembrance Day means a lot about that, right? The stuff
Yeah.
you've gone through to get to that day, what you've gone through that year, um, what you might be going up against, right?
Hmm.
When we were in Germany and when Bosnia broke out, I was on the first roto to go in, did a lot of training, and then ended up being at the last minute, stood down, and then Germany got closed down. The boys all came back to Canada. I was out. A lot of my brothers went over to Bosnia on some subsequent rotos. But so when you're in, you celebrate your brothers then and now, and you pay respect to the fallen, right?
Hmm.
And then once you've served and you're out, the remembrance is those that you've served with that are gone. Because believe it or not, it's incredible. I look around, I have at least 10 guys that are gone,
Yeah.
And you're like, how did that happen? So you the remembrance is the guys you served with, right? And again, it's always about those ahead, those before you, and then you look to the future.
Hmm.
What's ahead of you, right? And like today, my son, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's interesting. Every time, been we're lucky to know several vets in both of our lives and different
yeah,
aspects of our lives. And every single time Remembrance Day comes, and I happen to be speaking with a vet, and I ask them a question like that, I think like the expectation is to be talking about war itself, but I
mm-hmm.
never hear that as an answer. The answer I always hear
No.
is about the team and the people that they were with and
Oh,
the family, the brothers, and that sort of thing. Without
yeah,
exception, it's
yeah,
been like that. Every single person I've ever asked.
yeah. It's the brotherhood. It's 6'6". They talk about that brotherhood, right? But it's
Yeah.
strong, and it's a powerful part, right? And you know what? Today we had a great ceremony today. So we went to my son's regiments where they were parading, and it was a small, short, smaller type ceremony, and their unit's padre delivered the you know today's remembrance, and he made such a great point that it's kind of this notion that we fight for our freedom.
Yeah.
You know, why have our soldiers gone to war? Well, we had to fight for our freedoms. And World War One and World War Two, definitely, that was our freedoms. We had this arch emesis, and this Nazi regime. But then we kind of rolled into Korea, and then peacekeeping missions, you know, and then we ended up where we were with our most modern conflict with Afghanistan. And you know, my son's regiment was, they added a battle honor to their guidon recently, which is incredible. Like, I mean, this is a combat arms stuff, right? So, a guidon is a flag with all your battle honors on it from way back whenever the regiment started. It's a massive point of pride amongst any who's served in a regiment, right?
Okay.
So to have something modern day added, because a lot of them are from World War One, World War Two, right? So to add a battle honor or something. But he talked about how the soldiers of the King's Own, they fought for the freedoms of the people in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Mm.
They didn't fight for our freedom. So, soldiers don't necessarily fight for our freedoms. They fight for freedoms of those that need it desperately. I was like, damn, powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of processing that myself, and I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about that at all. That the last 20
100%.
years
Yeah.
has pretty much been constant war.
Sure.
For us, mostly like Afghanistan, places like the U.S. Add Iraq into that and all that sort of.
And the GWAT,
jazz.
absolutely. General Oregon
Yeah.
Terror, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And not once did I consider at all that the people that are fighting there, they're not fighting for us.
Yeah.
They're fighting for Afghanis. They're fighting for Iraqis
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whoever else. That's crazy. It's interesting perspective. I'd never thought about
And
that.
when we officially, when I say officially, it kind of relied on the states. When that official pullout from that, area happened, and how long did it take for the Taliban to take back control? And there were so many, and I all I could think of was like, oh my God, how the brothers that I know that served it, how are they going to take that? Like, and there was always the sentiment of like, well, what did we do over there?
Yeah.
And And I definitely cannot speak. I can't speak for anybody that was ever over there as much as I may have served the people that went over there, but you know what? They definitely, I feel anyway, brought a period of maybe peace. That people cared for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a world that did care for them. So I think, we accomplished something in Afghanistan, even though it may not be there right now. Hopefully there's a sentiment of what could be still left there, and maybe that'll happen again. But yeah,
Well, it
when
kind
we,
of.
I was gonna say, like, so I again, as a thought that I never thought of is that, our forces fight for the freedoms of anybody and everybody, not just us, right? But for those that perhaps may need it. So that's what I think about it. It was a great addition to why we may do Remembrance Day.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting perspective that I'm very, very confident that
Yeah,
most of the civilian population just have no idea about. They've
it's tough.
never even considered that.
Well, it
It's
requires a lot of
it's
imagination for people like us.
I think so.
You
I
know?
think
it's
so, yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. You know, I'm going to say this not to bring politics into it, but it's just to give context to the world we live in versus what is out there, and what the forces could be helping with is, we had a politician talk about, hey, shut off your Disney Plus, right?
Yeah.
And there's a large portion of the world, they're like, what the fuck is Disney Plus,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at what we do, and again, Remembrance Day, I'm like, this is what we're capable of doing. We're capable of hopefully being there to make sure people can escape a situation where they don't know what Disney Plus is.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
As stupid as that is, right? Like,
You know
who
what?
fucking cares? Who cares
Yeah,
if
like,
fuck about
on one-
Disney Plus?
Yeah,
But
on one hand you're thinking that, but on the other hand you're thinking like, no shit, that's a real thing.
right, so there's a lot of Canadians that perhaps don't get that. But and again, there has been what, 300,000 people a year coming into Canada. And again, not to be political, but there is an individual that was his mandate. That's what he wanted to do, was bring people into Canada, right? I don't really care why, but it's tough. It's tough to assimilate with these people, but god damn, you have to think about where they came from for at least 1 second.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And it's there, as tough as it may be for us to welcome them into Canada, because it's, you know what I mean? Think about how tough it is for them and where they came from, just for 1 second. And today, on November 11th, just give that just a brief thought, and think about that. And maybe, just maybe, well, that's what it's about. You'll get it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, when I occasionally I'm known somewhat, I guess, to go off on rants here and there. But
Sure.
when I talk about how good we have it in Canada and how spoiled
Incredible.
we are, and
Yep.
what, the only people left alive anymore. I mean, maybe there's a few that have seen true hardship.
Yep.
But by and large, the only people in this country that know true hardship are people that came from truly shitty places.
Truly shitty places. And there is some incredibly shitty places in this world. Oh my God. Yep.
We have no concept. We really
Yep.
don't.
Yep. So
Pretty privileged, for sure.
Well, I've been to a couple call them developing countries in the last couple of years, and I can still only imagine they're nothing like a country that's embroiled in active war or something like that. You know, like I've talked about it on the show before. I went to Pakistan earlier this year, and I was in Sialkot, which it was part. It was kind of on the border. Hang on, Todd.
Honey?
Just going to mute you, Todd, while we finish up the story here. It was kind of right on the border there when India and Pakistan were having their war, and so but never seemed to fully rebuild. So you're driving down the road, and there's rubble buildings and rubble on the side of the streets and garbage on the side of the streets. But even that is still nothing compared to, like, I didn't have to worry about if I walked outside the building that a shell was going to fall on my head or something like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Let's talk to Todd. Todd's our first. Let's talk to Todd. Todd's our first. Oh, we're gonna get echo off of Todd.
Let's
talk to Todd. Todd's our first. We're gonna get echo. Are you able to turn your speaker down a little bit there, Todd? I'm gonna unmute Todd, and I'm just gonna let him talk.
I've got to get some earbuds, I think.
Yeah.
That's all right. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to actually get some. Okay. Well, we'll put him on. Yeah, we'll put him on hold while we do that. I want to tell a really quick story. I think, I didn't serve. My dad didn't serve. I didn't have any uncles or brothers or anything that served. Had a lot of high school friends, but in my own family, the last person that served in my family was my grandfather in World War II. And he was a Navy guy, and he ended up stationed on the, Todd left, on the HMCS Haida, which was a destroyer that was in the Atlantic. And apparently a lot of its career was spent escorting supply ships, and that was part of that whole thing in the Atlantic during World War II. And apparently, the HMCS Haida used to be referred to as the fightingest ship in the Canadian Navy. It sank more tonnage than any other, I think any other ship, period, but for sure any other Commonwealth ship in the Atlantic theater.
Could you imagine that chaos?
Oh, I remember one time he told us, not a lot of detail. He never said a lot of detail, but he told us one time prior to being on the Haida. I forget the name of the ship he was on before that, but there was they were in a convoy in another series of ships, and several of them were sunk by some U-boats. And just like listening to him talk about how they were circling here and picking these people out of the water, and it took them hours, like more, practically a day, and just like the whole atmosphere of that. I can just imagine picking these people out of the Atlantic Ocean that just had their ship destroyed by a U-boat. It's
chaos.
Bonkers to imagine living through that. But
Can you hear me, bud?
yeah, Todd, welcome back.
Here we are.
What do you got for us?
Right.
You got a story, you got a history piece, you got a question. What's up?
I'm getting all sorts of double feedback here, so
Oh,
we'll just
You're
let
sounding
you
better
talk.
now.
Yeah.
I'm
you
just
sound
gonna
great on
turn
this
the
end.
volume right down and
Okay.
on my computer here, so you guys can.
Okay. Well, it's good to have you here. I'm glad you showed up, man.
Thanks, brother. I was just watching what Remembrance Day means and listening to everybody, and Remembrance Day is to me like every other day, because every day I think about my buddies that didn't come home from overseas, or they came home from overseas and we've lost them, right? So it's not that it's a really hard day. Every day is a hard day when you're thinking of them, right? And when people, thank you for your service and all that stuff, it's, or start throwing around the word hero and all that other shit. we're not the heroes. The guys that um, died over there, or did a hell of a lot more important shit than I did, are the real heroes, right? And after I got out, I had a lot of trouble finding my place and getting into the precision shooting and meeting people like Kurt and Miles and Rob Nibbs and Carrie, if he's out there listening. They made me feel like I was in again, or not necessarily in the Army again, but it gave me
but part of that tribe again,
the same
right?
sort of camaraderie that I felt like when I was in before, right? I don't
Who are you
know if
with,
anyone
Todd?
else goes through that or not, but I sure did. But
Todd, are you able
he's
to
got
hear
his
us at all, Todd?
volume right down.
a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Who are you with, Todd?
I was with 2VP.
2VP, yep.
And I got out and was with the NSAS GAR here in Saskatoon.
Yeah. So you know what, Todd, I don't know if you ever thought about this, and it was something you're 100% right. It is very tough once you get out. I don't think no matter how long you served. How many years did you put in?
Sorry?
How many years did you put in?
24.
Geez, long time, brother. It's something I never thought about until I started having some issues. And I tell you right now, I don't think there's a person who served that's got out that hasn't struggled the way you're talking about. And one of the things that when I heard this, I was like, oh my God, Jesus Christ, this is amazing. This is absolutely it. Is that there's a realization that you don't want to realize, is that you will never be as badass as you were when you were in. And it's a tough blow to take, right? You're that, and then some separation from your brothers, right? It's a tough go, man. It's a real tough go. And it's interesting you bring back, or you talk about the long range shooting and how that's helped you, because it's a difficult thing to hit a target at a long distance. There's a lot that you have to do to make that happen. And a lot of what you do to make that happen is very similar to what your life was like in the Army, in the military, especially in combat arms, right? So it's an extremely familiar place for me to be when we talked about the 712 precision, right, Kurt?
Yep.
And that path and following down that. And then, when you talk about meeting people like the guys at 6.6 and anybody else in, the long range shooting community. So 100%. I feel where you're coming from. Get it 100%. Yeah.
I've been trying to drag Todd out as much as possible here.
You forget the bad times, but you sure remember the good times, though, don't you?
100%. It's always the good times, man. Always the good times. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, I gotta get off of here, guys, before I start fucking wigging out. So.
No, it's you know what, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on, man. Talking about your time in and the brothers that you got, for sure. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
cheers,
thanks for
bud.
joining us, Todd.
Yeah,
you betcha. Take care.
Not to beat a dead horse or anything, but
No.
again, like Todd comes on, first thing he talks about is what it was for him was the people that he was there with. And when he had trouble finding his purpose when he got out, what helped him find his purpose was finding those people again. It's not necessarily the same people, but the
Sure.
same environment, the same
kind of circle,
the same atmosphere, the same circle. Yeah.
So and I'm going to circle back to what I said about the badass, right? And it was something I stumbled across, and thank God for the internet. It can be a terrible hole, but you can find things, you can find gems, right? And when I read that, and, it was a veteran article, right? Like, we mourn as veterans. We mourn the person we were, because you will never be as badass as that person, right? And you don't know that you're badass until you're out,
Right.
right? So it's tough. It's tough to, and there's a bit of, when you watch your brothers carry on, and let's say they go to a deployment, there's that guilt that some can carry. Jesus Christ, those guys are there, right? And when they come back injured, no matter their injury, whether it's physical, mental, combination of both, right? And you were like, well, why wasn't I there for that guy? Why wasn't I there for that guy?
Yeah.
Right?
Heard that lots. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's tough. So when it's incredible how, and I'm telling you right now, man, I'm loving the long range shooting thing. It's definitely is filling a niche, towards that, right? So the community is incredible. Whether there's guys that have served or not served, you hear it everywhere. Oh, I'm brand new. What should I have? How should I show up to my first match? And everybody says, hey, just show up. The guys are great.
Yeah.
They got it for you. They got you covered. And you do show up. And it's just like, yeah, what do you got? What do you got? What do you don't got? Oh, here, use my bag. Use this. You know what I mean? You got it. And they're like, they'll call out your misses when you really shouldn't, right? Hey, he's it's his first time. Dude, you're hitting low left or whatever, right?
Right. Yep. Lots of that.
And it's like, and nobody cares. Like, they call out your misses, and let's say you could have went from low, like very last place, and now all of a sudden you're middle of the pack on your first match.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's upset that you succeeded that well, because it was your first match and everybody helped you out to get there. Right. You know what I mean? Everybody was just so excited. That's a brotherhood.
Man, it's its own little microcosm in itself. It seems like I've never been a part of anything, and I've played team sports all my life, all that kind of stuff. That and you have a certain amount of camaraderie and brotherhood,
sure,
if you care to put it like that. But you get to these matches. I'm not even going to call them competitions, but I think they're more appropriately named matches, simply for the reason that people seem to come together, and it's not like other things where somebody's nipping at somebody else about something, whether it's gear or conduct or whatever.
Yeah,
it just really doesn't exist there. It's like I said, it's its own sort of microcosm. Everybody's there together. It seems like it's really an interesting phenomenon.
It is. Nope, we got somebody there.
Oh, Chris, you're mute, Chris. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's intentional.
So to kind of keep it on point with Remembrance Day and funny stories of what vets would say. So to Chris's point, when he talked about his grandpa, didn't talk too much about it, right? So my grandpa would not talk a lot about World War II. But after I got into the forces, he definitely talked a lot more to me about it.
Okay.
And up until this point, my grandpa was a rye lover, loved rye, right?
Okay.
And I definitely I'm a rye lover myself, right? So one day we were actually partaking in the rye, and we were talking a bit. He was opening up to me quite a bit about World War II and his time in Germany, and before he was captured. And he's like, "Hey," I said, "What's up?" And I was riding a motorcycle at the time too, right?
Okay.
He's like, "You know what the Germans thought of Canadians?" I was like, "Well, what's that, Grandpa?" He goes, "You know what they said?" He goes, "They had a theory about the best way to kill a Canadian." I was like, "Oh, well, what's that?" He's like, "Give him a bottle of rye and a motorcycle."
Never quite put those two together, but
No,
okay.
yeah, but he's like, because Canadians are just, kind of that berserker, right? We're just out there. We're on that edge, right? That's how we roll. And I was like, God damn it. I was like, that's the funniest thing I ever heard. I was like, come on, you didn't even say that. He's like, yeah, they said that. Give him a bottle ride, a motorcycle. Too funny.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's go.
You were talking. You said your dad. You were both rye guys.
My grandpa and I.
Just
Yeah.
because you were talking. Oh, your grandpa. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My grandfather never drank a day in his life.
Okay.
He was born. He lived his life, and he died without ever drinking.
Wow.
He claimed that he had never even tasted alcohol. Up until basically the day he died. What he used to do, he also never smoked. He used to sell his liquor ration on the boat to the other guys for favors, like extra socks and stuff like that. So
Right.
I guess in prison you sell cigarettes, and in the Navy during World War II, if you weren't a drinker, you sold your ration.
You guys, maybe you don't know this, but rum rations to this day are still a thing.
No,
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was when I was in, we would get some rum rations sometimes, and I told my kid that, my son, he was like, whatever. And then through the summer, he did his basic training and ended up on an exercise, and he was like, Dad, we were given a rum ration. He said, it's still a thing. I'm like,
awesome.
Sweet. Yeah.
That's great.
Use it wisely.
We've got another person joining us on the interwebs here, so I'm just going by phone call, obviously this time. It's Doug Rodenbush is joining us, and Doug, just so you know, they're going to be able to hear you, but you are not going to be able to hear them. So if they're saying something, I'll reiterate it to you. Sound good?
No worries, man.
All right.
I muted my TV so you're not getting feedback and stuff. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Are you sharing a story, or are you sharing a piece of history, or what have you got for us?
a little bit of both. I want to share a little bit of my family history, and honestly, just tell you guys what this day means to me. I have had two great uncles, actually. Well, one was an uncle, one was a great uncle, on opposite sides of my family. One was my dad's uncle, and one was my mom's brother. And they both wound up in the engineers overseas during WW2. Now, my mom's brother got blown up in a cat trying to clear some damaged road and stuff like that. And he came back with a broken back. Was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. My dad's uncle was also an engineer, but the most traumatic thing, and he had a hard time talking about it, but he did relay it to me when I was talking about getting into the forces myself. And he said that they were working on rebuilding a bridge, and he watched one of his buddies just drop into the water for no apparent reason, and then they heard a shot.
Oh, you're kidding.
And he was glued to a girder for over 2 hours while they hunted down the sniper and took him out of a tree. And that stuck with me. And years later, I went to try and join the armed forces, and unfortunately, after flying through all the initial testing and flying colors, just amazed they were, I failed in the medical end, so I couldn't join. And I felt bad about that forever. And one of the things that this day really means to me is, I appreciate everybody that's been over there, everybody that's gone out and fought for our freedoms and come back. And when they could come back, a lot of them came back broken in body or in soul, just like my uncle and my great uncle. And I think about what they went through. And after WW2, it wasn't recognized like it is today. They didn't have this type of support, even though it's lacking terribly today. They didn't have any back then. Yeah. And I watched those two men grow old with those memories. And it was tough. So, for me, a lot of it is yes, I'm grateful and I'm thankful and everything else for everybody who fought and died for us and for our freedoms. But we got a whole lot of people in this country who are most definitely not asking for more than what we can give.
Yeah, good point.
That's all I got.
Doug, I'm going to let you go so that you can hear their comments in reply, but thank you for calling in very much. Thank you for sharing your stories. Those are incredible stories. I'm going to let you go so you can turn your volume back up, and we're going to talk about you like you're here.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks for joining us. Could,
Yeah.
I
Hey,
don't.
thanks, Doug, for that. Those are great stories and memories for sure. Yeah.
Did I imagine probably not. Did anything like that ever happen in Germany? Like it wasn't. There was never anything like active, right? Nobody was ever like popping shots over the border or dropping mortars or anything like that. Was there? Or?
No. So again, the reason to etch, or the whole reason we were there, was a Cold War. It was a direct deterrence to Crazy Ivan, Russia, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now this while we were there, this other crazy thing popped up out of nowhere one night. Well, me and the boys were out getting hammered up and drinking, called the Gulf War, and that was something. That was something that really brought home starkly
The first one.
the Gulf War, yeah, the first Gulf War, right? Because so legit, I was talking to some, my son's, new comrades, right, and telling them and showing some pictures. We went out, things were normal, and we came back that night fully liquored up. There was tank traps and barbed wire, and fully loaded AR-15s when we got to the gate. Like, what the living hell happened here, right? What went down? And
Yeah.
Lahr is the largest airfield in Europe, and with the large contingent of American bases in Europe, Lahr became a large feeding point to the Gulf War, right? Mm-hmm. Which made it a large terrorist threat, right? So, that terrorist threat was examined, and responses were thought up, and my regiment, we were, how I talked about there was families and schools and stuff in Germany. Yeah. Well, we were given the task of protecting those entities, right? So we did, live, we were riding the school buses with loaded weapons, right? We were, in front of the schools with loaded weapons, right? We were doing 24/7 patrols around the married quarters, right? So you have no idea how fast things can change in your world when it comes to threats from something, right? Yeah. And I was like, no thought, like, you were like, did this just happen? And then as you're doing these things in shifts, so you're at your little mess on the base, and you're watching, and then CNN was a new thing back then, right? So now you're watching this war live. In Kuwait, and you're watching the tanks, the Americans roll across the desert. It was insane, right? Those memories, right? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What must that feel like? I have memories of when certain things kicked off through my rather long life. Thanks, Rob, for validating that.
Prick.
But like when you were over there, and you're posted, you're doing exercises, whatever else, and then this thing kicks off, and you must get a sense of, holy Christ, this is now fucking real. Like, what must that be like?
Well, you're 100% wondering what's going to happen with you, because again, you're watching units. Again, it was an American war to begin with, right? Where it started from. And I know the Brits ended up down there and some larger, and we had Canadian contingents down there in the Air Force and stuff like that, right? The CF-18s ended up. Dude, can you?
I'll just read that for you. Uke says, dude, CNN introduced a crazy new level to the world. It was just a kid. He was just a kid during the OP Desert Shield storm. But I can remember watching that shit with my dad and being dumbfounded.
Yeah, so it was. No. It's good to read that. So I was, and it was like, like the CNN was a new thing. So, we're like, oh my God, this war just kicked off that you never thought would even kick off.
Yeah.
And now you're watching them. So again, I'm tanks. And then you're watching American tanks roll around and Bradleys, and you're like, shit, are we going down there? Right. And you're asking every day, right? Because you're walking around, like, you've got like a fully automatic C7, or in our case it was a C8, and you're riding with your kids of your own country in their school bus, right?
Mhm.
And you're standing in front of their schools, and you're like every day you're asking your higher ranks, are we going? Are we going? They don't know, and if they know, they're not telling you,
Mhm.
right? It,
Mhm.
it was a crazy time,
It's
crazy
got to
time.
just be surreal, like at all times surreal.
Yes. So
Wow.
and when you think about, again, like Doug's story, and you're just how war can develop, and it can come out of nowhere.
Mhm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And the
Quick.
chaos that brings.
I can only imagine. A quick comment from a civilian perspective, but was on the Russian side for a lot of years. Jens grew up. Well, I don't know if he. I don't know entirely grew up is accurate, but Jens spent time in East Germany as a younger kid.
Right.
So
Oh,
his comment, sorry, East Berlin, I should say.
yeah.
His comment is the Russians and East German border patrol were not allowed to open fire upon any West Germans or allies on the west side. I can imagine they probably weren't allowed to. You can only
Yeah.
imagine what that type of stuff would kick off with the tensions and stuff.
Jens, I mean, I'm so happy. Like, again, so I was in Germany when the wall came down,
Mm.
which is what led to CFB Europe being shut down, right? And that was something insane to be a part of that too, right? So, so happy that happened, and for people to be able to migrate
Right.
from that, right?
Right.
100%. I'm glad. If he was there and he was able to be part of that migration, man, so happy for him.
Well, I think he wasn't he, Kurt? Like he was there when the wall came down, and it wasn't until long after
Yep,
that he
for sure.
left, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. What exactly he did there.
11, eh? Wow.
But
Um,
I just Jens doesn't talk too much about it. He's just
yeah.
he's one of those guys. He's just thankful to be here. Well, at least until Trudeau came along. But
So you know what, Kurt? I think you had a, so I think I'm just remembering back. So you kind of had a question about, what was that like to be a part of how the Gulf War broke out in any effect.
Mhm.
It really meant not a lot to me
Okay,
for the longest time.
great.
And social media, Facebook,
Yeah,
could be a blessing or the devil.
yeah.
And so I joined a Facebook group called CFB LAR then and now or whatever, right?
Okay, right.
And for whatever reason, I talked about, and I posted some pictures from my time when that happened, right?
Mhm.
And this guy come on, grown adult, family in Canada, right? And he said, dude, I remember you guys. I was a little guy, and I had a little sister even younger than I am, and we were scared shitless.
Yeah.
And he goes, I remember you guys being on my bus, and we felt so much safe. Dude, broke up. I was destroyed for probably a week. Never thought about that. I never thought about that for a second, right?
From their
I just
perspective.
What your
I was
presence meant to those people.
yeah, right. I never thought about that for 1 millisecond, and I was like just broken up for. I was like, oh my god, what? I was like, what? So, yeah,
Crazy.
and we had an Oka going on. Oka, yeah, that was crazy. Something, wasn't it, Phil?
Like,
Yeah, Oka was
at home
something.
and abroad.
Yeah. Oka was something. Remembrance. How would you? Do I think of Oka in a sense of Remembrance Day? I don't know if I ever think about that, but Oka was definitely a tense time in Canadian history.
Yes. Yep.
When the Canadian military had to be involved in a tense situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, isn't that something, right?
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? I look at that situation, and I'm not, when I look at the Oka Warriors or who they were or what, that how could you be mad at those guys?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's a catch 22 and a half, isn't it?
Right. It circles back to where we are today. I mean, how long was Oka? What, probably 30 plus years ago?
Yeah, it was 30 something. Yeah.
And we're still talking about reconciliation.
Yeah.
Well, we're still trying to get just clean drinking water on some reserves.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Again, Canadian military, what did they do? What did we think about? Right? And here was a situation on our very own soil where they came in and tried to, and successfully, brokered peace against some, Canadian history that still hasn't been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever side you fall on that, I don't care, but it's a shameful part of Canada that hasn't been resolved, and unfortunate, right?
It seems especially in that situation, but I'm wondering what you think about this. It almost seems like so often, and speaking specifically about Oka, maybe think about it, but I don't think it's exclusive to this. That the soldier seems to be the rope in the middle of the tug of war, especially the peacekeeping soldier.
Always. Oh my God, if you ever have the opportunity to get in front of, when you talk about peacekeeping missions for Canada have always ended up in a disaster. Always, which is unfortunate, right? But if you get in front of some soldiers that have done time in Bosnia and Yugoslavia, oh my God, those guys deserve more hugs and kisses than we could ever get from a country. The stuff that those guys went through, incredible, right? Rwanda.
And the stuff that they were forced to watch and not do anything about.
Yep.
That's got to be
I think that's the worst of it.
Yeah, I can only imagine having to be there, but not being able to intervene.
Yeah, there was some, man. If there's any soldiers watching tonight that were part of Bosnia, Yugoslavia, Rwanda, any of those peacekeeping tours, and they're struggling, please reach out, because those guys have been through hell. Unfortunately, man, those were some extremely rough tours. Yep.
Let me ask you about that, Rob.
Sure.
And this might be a bit of a touchy subject, and I have no idea whether I'm treading on thin ice here or not. So, be my guide, if you will.
Sure.
We hear about this all the time. Reach out. I believe there's supposed to be help through Veterans Affairs and all of this sort of stuff for veterans. But we also, on the flip side of that, we also hear all the time how that type of help isn't always that much of a help, and that I've heard some people say, and we even just heard Todd, talking tonight, that it was being able to find his group again, find the camaraderie in the people again, rather than the institution that's supposed to be able to help. So how does, if there's a veteran out there that hasn't been able to find his group again,
wasn't me
that hasn't been able to or hasn't found help in the institutionalized help, how do they find that group? How, is that even something that you can even answer?
Man, so again, anything's possible, but I feel like a veteran would have contact with at least one person they served with. There's always one buddy, one brother that is everything to you, and you still have contact with at least one person that you served with. At least one. You don't fully ever sever ties, right? And not every person's on social media, right? This is where Facebook has a place in connecting people, right? Mm-hmm. It can definitely be the devil and tear you down in a second, in a heartbeat, right? But unfortunately, reaching out to Veterans Affairs for any type of help is not. It's not what it's made out to be. It's not the fix, right?
Not what it's supposed to be.
Not what it's supposed to be. If you are a veteran without any ties whatsoever to any other brothers you served with, and you are on the edge, 911. 911. 100%. That's your go-to, because bare minimum, you're gonna have somebody that's gonna be on the line with you and talk you through.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
911.
some human connection.
911 will not hang up on you, and if you tell them that you're a veteran and you are like, this is it, you know what I mean? When I hang up this phone and I'm going to do the most terrible thing ever, they won't let you hang up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So bare minimum, 911, 100%. If you got nobody left in your life,
Mm-hmm.
please call 911. If you've got one person left in your life that you served with, give that person a call. I would be stunned to hear that brother would not be there for you. Yeah.
I imagine the hardest part is asking for help.
100%. 100%. I mean, some of the most stoic people I know are the guys I served with, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You dude, did you just cut off your fucking arm? No. No. I'm looking at your arm is actually gone.
It'll be all right.
Nah. It'll be all right. Really? Well, maybe, just me spitballing here, brother. Can I maybe just put something on that? We'll do. Okay. No, yeah, we're the worst. We're the worst enemies to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
100%.
Well,
yeah.
I want to ask you another question, because so much, I think unintentionally, the theme has become a lot about finding your tribe, if you want to put it that way, the atmosphere, the family. In terms of, even Todd came on, he was talking about like he was able to find his group again through shooting.
Yeah.
I've in my day job, in the martial arts world, especially Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, with the popularity that it has right now, you hear a lot about veterans talking about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, especially when you have, U.S. Veteran celebrities like Tim Kennedy and Jocko Willink and all those guys, and they're obviously very big into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
So that's maybe another obvious one. You shooting, fighting.
Yep.
Is there anything else? Like, I'm just trying to think of like what's number 3 as the obvious choice for somebody to try and find their group.
Okay. You know what? It really comes down to you and what you love, right? So there's a soldier that I got to know through the adventure that he went on in his effort to raise awareness, primarily for Bosnian and Yugoslavian soldiers, and his name is Paul Nichols. I don't know if you remember him. He rode his horse across Canada.
That's where I got the name. Yep.
Yeah.
I recognized the name. I just didn't know why.
Yeah. And Paul, he was really struggling with his from his tours in Bosnia, and what really kind of just destroyed him was he had some paraphernalia on that identified him as being a Bosnian soldier, and he was at a checkout at a grocery store, and a lady that was a child in Bosnia at the time, who was really helped by Canadian soldiers, came up to him and just completely just like, oh my God, thank you to death. And he just had, again, kind of like, how the Padre today was talking about, we fight for the freedoms of others, not just ourselves. And that's what she brought to him, was like, I'm here today because of you. And it really brought him home, right? Paul is an avid fly fisherman. The guy, that's his go-to, right?
Okay. Yeah.
He ties flies. He loves fly fishing. You know, among other horses is another big one, right? But if you go to what you love, you will find a group. You will.
Yeah.
You'll find a group. You will find a group with something you love, and there's a connection there, right? When you do something with people that love what you love, you will find a connection and a brotherhood. You will.
Mhm. Mhm.
You will find peace in that, right? You will find somebody. You will probably find somebody that you can confide in, right?
Yeah.
At least that you could say, "Hey, I'm hurting," right? And maybe stop that day, that bad day, right? But yeah, it's you know, when you're looking for that, um you know, it circles back to how I was saying, how you will never be as badass as you once were, right? Well, what made you badass back then? You know, there was things like, you know, the like you name a firearm, and it's probably, I haven't shot it, right? Like, you know, I was a tank gunner, for God's sakes, right?
Yeah.
A tank gunner. How amazing is that, right? You know, I've shot 50 cal, I've shot, you know, law, I've shot, you know, SMG, like, Jesus Christ, I've, you know,
Right.
you've played with it all. You've been, you know, the tip of the spear, right? Um, you know, you would go run 15K a day, hungover or not, didn't matter, right? Today that would kill me. That would literally kill me, right? So, you know, you go through all these emotions when you try to deal with that, you know, and old age doesn't help. So yeah, um, if you're sitting there as a veteran struggling, but yet that's all you're doing is sitting there, that's your number one problem.
Yep.
And I know,
Sure.
and I know
Yeah.
I know it's easy for me to say, because you know, we all struggle. Trust me, right?
Mhm.
Weightlifting. One of the guys I was out with today, that's what gets him through the day. You know, he goes to the gym.
Just weightlifting.
Right.
Yeah, you
So
know.
it doesn't matter what it is, just as long as it's something.
Yep. You know, you have to be pushing yourself,
Yeah.
right? I mean, again, that's combat arms, right?
Mhm.
And I can only speak from the perspective of combat arms, right? Like, I mean, there's so many people that have served, you know, Air Force, Navy, artillery, um, you know, all the support trades, right?
Mhm.
You know, and they do get a bit of a bum rap, you know, like when we had forces in Afghanistan, and we'll use that because that's our latest
Sure.
example to draw from, right? There was people stationed, you know, behind the wire, so to speak, right? Doing the mundane things that you need to do to run an army, right?
But
Pushing
necessary.
paper, but
Yeah.
necessary. And when the bombs are coming in behind the wire, and the guys that have been out there are like shrugging it off, like, yeah, like whatever, and these people are losing the goddamn motherfucking mind, right?
Yeah.
To this day, that haunts them.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
interesting point that you're making, that like you've got to push yourself. But another interesting point is, well, oh geez, that just blocked your screen right now.
No, it's okay. That's Phil. What was Phil gonna say here?
He says
Um,
Rob's
yeah,
comment is absolutely accurate in so many ways, and it is also incumbent on many of us around the fringes to strike up friendships with veterans in our circle and reach out around some
yeah.
times of the year. I still talk every 17th September to a guy who was a friend of my dad's, and he was at Market Garden too.
Market
It's
garden.
a
Wow. Yeah.
it's a hard day, and it is just a day to so many. If you have veteran friends, just give them a call.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, fantastic point Phil made is civilians working with veterans, right? It's a lot more evident today who's a veteran, right? Typically, a lot of us got the veteran plate.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know, so myself, Bill Wright, right? I show up to work, got a vet plate. I typically wear some type of camouflage to work, right? It's not unknown, and I talk about my service, right?
Right.
But man, we can be cagey sometimes, right? So if you know, if you're on a civvy job, no matter what it is, you're at McDonald's, no matter where you're at, and this dude beside you is getting wiggy and cagey, you're like, dude, you just went like 180 degrees, and you know he's a vet,
Yeah.
just be a little bit easy on him or her, right? And be like, hey, what's going on? You know, you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Just
and
Yeah, that's the
be
thing.
there because
You don't know
and
their
you
story.
don't know that person may just open up a wave that you would not expect.
yeah,
Like it may all come out. um,
they could be
and
holding
that's
on to a
something.
lot.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, yeah, interesting point.
So and that's something, society again. Um, there was this whole time, like when I was in, another interesting point, just to put, just to dot the I of how times change in the Canadian Forces. When I served and I went through basic, so as it is, I have like one medal, right? Special service medal. And it was uncommon for anybody at the time to have more than three. Like that was like, whoa, look at that dude, right? And everybody, like my instructors, nobody had any combat time, right? Now my son goes through basic training. Damn near every one of his instructors got time in Afghanistan. They got combat experience, right?
Right.
And they're bringing that experience back to the training. So when they're kind of like feeling like, why are we doing this? Those same questions. They're like, dude, this is why you do this. This is why we're doing this to you. And you go on parades now, and you see guys like 4 medals up to 10 medals, right?
Mm.
It's something we have. I just had a guy I served with back. He was in town. I haven't seen the guy for about 25 years. When he left, after I had, departed ways with him, he went on to different careers in the military, ended up in Honduras, back in Africa. He's got Iraq, his chest odometer is huge as well. The experiences that Canadians go through around the world is just, we have no idea. So there is a whole new batch of soldiers coming out that I think aren't given the credit they deserve because of how the army is transforming.
Yeah.
You're
Absolutely right. Yeah.
It can be hard for guys from my era, to see guys with long hair, beards, whatever, a guy that's wearing a skirt, right? In combat arms, especially. Dude, the world's changing.
Mm.
As long as they are a soldier, they're a soldier, right? If they're a brother, they're a brother. They got your back together. It doesn't matter how they're showing up. It really doesn't.
The great equalizer, hey?
Great equalizer, right? So I've been a little bit more, is agnostic the proper word? I'm not sure. But I tend to be a little bit more, again, maybe my son being in the military is, and today I've seen some of these people, right, with longer hair, stuff like that, like out of the norm from what I was used to in a combat arms unit.
Mm-hmm.
And, they went through some hard times. My son's basic training was not a cakewalk, despite what might be, told. And he says they're switched on dudes, so I have to take his word for that, right?
It's good.
Yeah.
It brings some faith back into things for me a little bit, because there's so much focus on like the colored hair and the dresses and all that.
It is, I'm just not. I'm not sure I understand that, because again, not to be political, I'm not a liberal by any stretch of the imagination, right? But I just fail to believe we're, when it comes down to supporting the men and women of our forces, why that needs to be something we're worried about, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Honestly, is that because all the ammunition that we had for our people to defend us and the world has now been sent to Ukraine, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been an emphasis to replace that.
Yeah.
No,
why are we not worried about that?
By design, I'm sure.
You're the second veteran that I've heard say that, and that's
Yeah.
It's a bit of a worrying point to hear, actually.
Yep.
It is a proxy war of a sort.
Hmm
I
hmm
think if we don't see that, I think you get your head in the sand. We're at a
Yeah.
proxy war for sure.
Yeah. Well, there was a veteran from Saskatchewan that was over in Ukraine and was killed in action just last weekend.
Mm.
So I mean,
Crazy.
even if we have if Canadians are not officially sanctioned on the ground in there, there are still
Yeah.
Canadians on the ground there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, um, we again, I think, have no understanding the level of Canadian forces and JFT too. Those boys, that's our SEAL Team 6,
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
and those guys they are nonstop. So
I've met a couple of those JTF2 guys, and they seem pretty
yeah,
switched on like all the time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So they're nonstop. Those guys.
yeah, it's crazy. Well, it seems like nobody else wants to join us to have a chat. We're hitting that time of night when we usually
Sure.
say goodbye. Rob, I want to well, first I want to thank Todd and Doug for coming on and sharing some stories
Absolutely.
and talking with us.
Yeah.
That it take we do it all the time, Rooster and I, and so it's old hat for us, but it takes a lot of balls to like
It
get
does.
up, and especially because
Yeah.
there's going to be well over 1,000 people, well over 20 people that listen to this at some point. So
Yeah.
just like to thank them for coming on first of all.
Absolutely.
But I want to give
Todd was tipping the spear, buddy. And you know what? And today is a tough day. Today is a tough day for any veteran. And you know what, Todd? Reach out to a buddy, man. Call a buddy. It's all good. Love you, brother.
Awesome. Well, I can't say anything any better than that, so maybe we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I'd like to say thank you, Rob, for joining us on Remembrance Day, and thanks to all of our listeners who have joined us, and thanks to all of our supporters who allow us to do this every week, many of which are veterans themselves. We're talking about Shane and Steve.
Yeah.
We're talking about Miles, Carrie, and Cappy. We're talking about Duncan and Rob. We're talking about Phil Odell, Doug and Nisa, Vanya and Carly, and Oscar. Thank you guys an immeasurable amount for supporting the show, and thanks to all our listeners.
Yes.
Once again, thank you, Rob, for coming on and joining us. Am I missing anything,
100%.
Rooster?
No, I think you got it all. You're good at that, pal.
Yeah.
Shit.
Thanks to everyone that participated tonight.
Yeah.
To
And
make
if
it
the
great.
boys of 6-6 are calling, Pro Patricia Brothers.
Yeah.
Always.
Awesome. Well, at the risk of giving the civvy perspective, just maybe one last comment. It's not just one day of the year. Veterans exist the other 364 days a year too.
Yeah.
And war is a going concern. It is a part of our history, it is a part of our past, but it is also a part of our present and a part of our future. And I think that it would behoove all of us who are, especially those of us who are civilians, to remember that 365 days a year. And don't
Agreed.
forget it just until next November 11th. So
Yeah.
I think other than that, guys, thanks for joining us. We are out of here. We will see you all next week.
Thanks, folks.